Good afternoon. Welcome to the Business Boardcast. So today I am with Nick Babington. Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm very good. Nicky, how are you?
Excellent. Yeah, all really good. Thank you. Yeah, lovely Friday, and all having a really good week. So we also have another person about to join us as well, but we're Mike. So we will add him in shortly. But today, what we're talking about is employment law. As always, if you're watching in the live show, please do ask questions whenever you like, and we will endeavour to answer them as we go along. So you should be able to just pop your question into the comments, or even just say hello or make a comment on whatever it is. Please just do that, and so that we know that you're watching it, and any questions I will feed through to Nick. What we are, and hopefully fingers crossed if technology permits, Mike as well. So what we are aiming to do today is go through several areas. We're going to be talking about the latest changes in employment law. We're going to be looking at the latest employment rights bill, and also things that are on the green paper as well. We're also going to talk about any latest case law, recent, talk about hot topics. So what are the things that are coming through highest on the Croner line at the moment, what business owners are asking about. I'm very, very aware that there's been lots of people are talking about redundancies. They've already been doing some redundancies, but some people are prepping to do some redundancies for this year. So we are going to do a bit of a section on there. As I said, we'll take questions as we go. We've got another little area that we will cover if we run out, if we've got extra time. But those are the main ones that we're aiming to cover for today. So without a further ado, Nick, do you want to just go through sort of the latest, sort of the headlines of what has changes with the new government?
Yeah, okay. Right. So, Nicky, firstly, thank you for joining again. I've done this once before and I enjoyed it. I'm always a little bit nervous in these things. People say that can't be true, but I can promise you I am. And I'm also sat in my car, which wasn't planned. I was on the M25 and got pulled over. There was lots of traffic issues, so I had to come over in a safe place.
Not pulled over for speeding, by the way.
Not pulled over, but no, the police were pulling everybody over, and were asked. So I had to find somewhere nice, but I've got some signal anyway, which is the most important thing. That's a huge list that you've mentioned, Nicky, and we'll go through as much as we can. So look, I think anybody that reads the news, opens the newspaper, will see that employment law has changed significantly, tail end of 24, and we've got other bits that we're working through this year. So it was the 13th of June, actually, that Labour announced their plans to make work pay. So the employment rights bill, that's what we've got. So they were the claim was that there were 28 changes in all to existing employment law. Yeah, okay.
We will be testing everyone at the end. Not really.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the idea was to deliver economic security and growth to business, workers, and communities. So it was interesting with some recent research on that Croner have done, and these changes will impact employers up and down the country. And getting it wrong could land them with tribunal claims with the average cost of just under 12,000. That was some research that we did. So some of the changes. Okay. Now these are the main top ones that have come through our advice and line. And redundancy again is something, Nicky, quite right, that people are calling about, and restructuring. And of course that can have challenges regarding whether or not it's capability, was the job actually gone? And I'm seeing still too many businesses that have got retirement policies in their documentation. I mean, this is something that was eradicated quite some time ago. because it's age discrimination. You can't have retirement. But look, we're coming across it quite a bit, and employees are taking advice and commenting on such policies that are incorrect, and it's just very, very difficult to defend yourself. So redundancy, get your documents right before you look at any form of process. But look, okay, so some of the changes, strengthened existing rights. Okay, so this would predominantly build up maternity and redundancy rights. Fire and rehire schemes, that's coming in the news quite a bit. So the reform will implement effective remedies against abuse and replace the inadequate statutory code. So we've got ban on explosive 0-hour contracts. Now this is an interesting one. So zero hours contracts, I mean, if you read anything in the press will tell you that no one likes 0-hour contracts. In fact, 28% of businesses in the UK use 0 hours contracts for the right reason. Maybe you are somebody who can only work a few hours a day. Maybe you've got a vulnerable adult you're looking after, or you've got childcare challenges. Why should that? Or you're a student. Absolutely, another one. Yeah, absolutely right. Lots of reasons for doing it, and of course, you've got to get that right. So why is there a ban? I mean, there's still a huge amount of work that we're doing, and we're lobbying. This is something that's not going to come through yet, but it's going to be something that we need to prepare for. And the early signs is to make sure that you lengthen your policies, to make sure that when somebody joins you, their probation is at least 9 months, example, and you're checking in monthly to make sure that you are you're discussing any specific targets and expectations and any areas that they're not meeting. Otherwise, you've also got the constructive dismissal change from as a day one right, and there's all sorts of bits and bobs from there. So flexible working.
That's really important, because so many employers just think, oh, under 2 years, no problem, just get rid of people. That's not the reality. There's so many different things that they can be thinking about so you have to get the right advice to look at how to look after your employees, right? And when it doesn't work out, how to deal with it.
Yeah, I get this. I hear this. Nick, would like to exit this person, or this person's left, but they've not been here 2 years, so we can do what we like, right? And okay, they can't claim constructive dismissal, but they can claim everything else, starting with breach of contract from not having up-to-date documentation. There are ways that you can strengthen the relationship for employers, and that's what we need to try and focus on. So you're quite right about making sure that the documentation is accurate and up to date. You have an effective and robust policy that would enable you to check in on performance and ensure that there is the same for the employee to feedback on how they feel things are going. Okay. Short service dismissal clause. So that will provide you the option to exit quicker without going through the normal process. So there are ways that you can strengthen your documentation to ensure that you can make a swift exit. But it's again goes back to your documentation, the advice, and the help, and how you're ensuring that you're protected. The employees need their contracts and handbooks pre-employment now too, so they need to be signed pre-employment.
Oh, it's now pre-employment, so it's not within the 8 weeks of the start. You have to give them beforehand.
Yeah, pre-employment. Oh. Okay, the contract must now have. I need to
talk to you more often, Nick.
Yeah, feel free. Yeah, contract.
Any recruitment this year need to get them to them before.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. And make sure they're aware of the job description. Anyone that you're interviewing, people have pre-employment rights, as we know. So let's make sure they have the job description. Let's make sure that you're using your scoring assessments when you're interviewing. You send out the offer letter, when they come back, accepting that, that's when your contract, your handbook, your health questionnaire form, and your application form should be going out. We need to consider mental health within this. We need to be able to identify that they were fully aware of the role before they joined. And then that's going to strengthen, the day one right for constructive dismissal when that comes in, and make sure that the documentation, gives you the options to make a decision. I sit with employers every day, 2-3 times a day, and I very rarely come across an employer that I think is out there to try and cheat the system. What I do come across is employers that wish to exit people for the right reasons, but maybe they fall down the cracks in the pavement when it comes to process and comes to documentation, and that's what gets them into tribunals or disputes, or they receive letters from win-no-fee lawyers. That's the bit that we try and stop happening from there.
Indeed. And it's critical there, isn't it? It's not just about adhering to employment law, but making sure you're following your own process. So if you've got a process in your handbook, make sure you're following your own process. That's often crazy, isn't it, when they're not even following their own?
And I think do you know what? I think it's because your handbook you'll do, and unless you're being supported, is it being updated? Where is it? Who owns it? Somebody might take advice at that point on a situation. You then find that the advice that you get is current and it's what you should do, but then you find, as you quite rightly point out, Nicky, that that's not reflected in your handbook. So when you get that call of, you've exited me or challenged my performance, and this is the process. But when I joined you, I was given a handbook, and this was the process that you're supposed to go down. So,
I'm sorry, I'm just checking. That's not Mike beeping you lots, is it?
No, it's not. No, I think he's still on. I think he's still on the call with the client. So we'll let him off. We'll let him off the pressure.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we had talked, actually. Might as well, it might be a good segue to go at this point. We were going to, sure, if we were going to go through it, but I think it is valid to talk now on it. It is important to think, if you are thinking about redundancies or exits or whatever, is think about what is the best way to exit, because there are 4 different ways of exiting. You've got the redundancy, you've got the settlement agreement, capability, or gross misconduct. Because I'm not the employment law expert at all, but obviously I'm talking to employers every day, and it's amazing how many people think, oh, I can do it via redundancy or something, and then they don't realise, the process. Well, actually, this is a good time to go through the process. Should we go through high-level redundancy process? What you should do?
Okay, all right. So first thing we need to remember, it's the role that's being made redundant and not the person. Okay, so there's the first trigger point. And again, look, I understand employers, they need to get to a position, and the challenge of redundancy comes when you've got somebody with a length of service. So I can give you an example. So I was looking after a small farm, 4 employees. 2 employees have been there for 45 years. And one of the guys was struggling with his health, been a bit late, had to nip off to the doctors from time to time, and was struggling to get on and off the big equipment that they use. And as a family, they thought that now was the time he should be made redundant. We should make him redundant, and because he can't do the job. So they got the 2 things mixed up. They got capability mixed up, and they got redundancy mixed up. But what the employee thought was going to have was the fact that he was be given a payment of 20 years based on his service. But the employers were thinking, no, we're not making you, we're not retiring you. We're just suggesting that you take a break, but we're not going to pay you a redundancy policy. So as you can imagine, a payment. So you can imagine it got very, very tricky, and they went down the exit based on, look, you're retiring, but we're not going to pay you anything. It's just that you're not well enough to do the job. So they unfortunately got the two processes mixed up, and it ended up having to deal with this in a settlement, which was very unfortunate. So there are exiting, as you say, reasons for exit, Nicky. So, you've got loss of a statutory ban, loss of driving license, another one I can add to your list. So if you've got, a salesperson and they lose their driving license and they need the driving license to do the job, then that's a relatively clear way to do it. The big thing is that mix on capability. So I meet many employers that say, I have an employee working for me, has done for quite some time, and they're not capable of doing the job anymore, Nick. Their health is restricting them. And that capability is a I wouldn't say a tricky process. It's a slightly higher risk process, but it's a process that you would go down, based on somebody's health, not based on redundancy, because that role is still there. Okay, so that's that, and many employers get this wrong. It's not just as simple as saying, "Oh, well, I just make you redundant." So you need a policy, of course. You need a policy, and remember that you're not the process of redundancy. You're not supposed to know the person you're going to make redundant until you finish the process. Now, being realistic, most employers do, or they can certainly hazard a guess that if there's a certain department that is being managed in a different way, then it's likely to be somebody from there. So that you need to consider who's put on risk, and you need to discuss and open the strategy. You then need to do the scoring assessments, okay, and take the interviews and look at alternative options, and then look at business needs, and that should quite neatly point to the person or persons that would leave based on the job going, and it's the job going or the department going, and they're the clear differences. And that's the if you end up being challenged, you need to be able to provide a life story based on day 1 and day 10, or however long that day process is, where anybody can pick up that file and read through the reasons for the redundancy and understand the process and understand the outcome.
Absolutely.
That's the main aim.
Very important to understand the process, and because it's a slightly different process depending on the size of your business as well. So really important to check with Croner, Peninsula, ACAS, whoever you use. Yeah. Make sure you've got the latest work. We've got a question from Liz regarding redundancy. Saying, hi Nick, what steps can small businesses take to balance financial constraints with ethical redundancy practices? Very good question.
It is. So can you repeat that again for me?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Did it come up on the screen?
Yeah. What steps can small businesses take to balance financial constraints with ethical redundancy practices?
So if I'm believing the question's right, okay, Elizabeth is asking that if you have a small business, okay, and the financial constraints. So your main redundancy policies are done for two reasons. Predominantly because there is no need for the job or some form of restructure, which might well mean, and the main benefit, to have a financial better place or to save some costings somewhere. I'm not sure that a straightforward process, you can do anything to improve any cost of a process, because the process is what the process is. So it's more the protection of the business by making sure that you go down the right process, rather than some financial savings.
Yeah, I would say it's before you do anything, and this is something that I've done a lot when I've been in big corporates, and unfortunately been through quite a few different redundancy processes of calculations for them. Fortunately, never on the other side, but it's always been on the setting them. So, but what's important that you do as a business is plan and calculate what you're actually trying to do. So obviously a lot of businesses are saying, oh my God, actually my employment bill, for example, has gone up because of the employer's national insurance increases and the thresholds. And so, they're thinking, oh, instead of having to pay £500,000 next year on employment costs, they're having to pay £550,000, for example. It could be that. And so they're going, oh my God, I've got this extra cost. What do I do? So they're thinking, oh, right, I'm going to have to make people redundant. Now, what you actually then have to do is actually plan it through and think, okay, if I make people redundant, what's going to be the cost of those redundancies? Because like Nick was referring to his farming situation, people have been in a role for 20, 40 years. The process of actually making somebody redundant that's been very long term is very expensive. Hence why you find in big places, and they do a redundancy process, they often ask for volunteers for the redundancy because they're looking for any of the recent people that are happy to take perhaps a bit extra than they would have statutory. But it's much cheaper to get rid of somebody that's only been there for 5 years compared to somebody that's been there for 20 years. So you may think, oh my God, I've got to save because of NI hikes. But actually, if you then have redundancy and that's cost you a load of money, you might not be able to afford it. So you've got to be super careful of how you do this from a financial perspective.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? And if you've got a genuine challenge as a business, as a small business, and you've got 5, 6 staff, and you have to make somebody redundant for a reason, because the role's gone and that person has had significant service, it is very difficult because that person is entitled to that particular payment. The bit I was referring to was when, you've got somebody who has to let somebody go due to the fact they're unwell or not able to perform the task, and they now think that they have been made redundant.
And that's not redundancy, that's a capability process.
Yeah, and that's capability, and that's the mix
might need
people
to involve the occupational health, and it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Voluntary redundancy.
Another question come up from Paul. Bit outside today's remit, okay, but I'm involved with a health charity. Oh, he was telling me about this yesterday, actually. Heavily impacted by NI changes. Yeah, basically moved it from a net surplus to a net not surplus. Do you think any chance of government backtracking on NI changes for health, social services sector to protect employees?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I doubt it. I mean, I'm not on the political scene. I mean, I think
that's very unlikely. It'd be very difficult to segregate in national insurance, because would you go, what about within the NHS? Does that mean an accountant within the NHS wouldn't be paying national insurance? But I don't know. I don't see that happening. I mean, I know there are certain people, there are certain areas where you do get NI benefit, like apprentices, and there's some relief if you take on ex-forces people, but that's peanuts compared to the whole health sector.
We support a lot of care homes, domiciliary care, and a lot of charities, and they're suffering currently, and changes have had to happen where they've had to look at restructuring. We've seen a lot of that this year. And it's very unfortunate and challenging for these businesses.
I mean, all I can see is that you can't do anything caring wise. I think somebody was talking the other day, I think it was on the radio, about you can't at the moment get AI to go and change somebody's dressing, but what you can do is they're increasingly people, health sector using AI or computer learning, whatever else, to like read x-rays and different things like that. So I could see where they can bring in technology to reduce people, but I don't see it happening on NI things for now. I don't see how they could implement it, to be honest.
No. Again,
not from a tax perspective.
No.
But it's absolutely fair point, because it is, unfortunately, it's the hospitality sector, the retail sector, the healthcare sector, social services sector. Those are the 4 areas that are really feeling the pinch from these changes, because they're heavy employers, large amounts. Okay, we've got just a few more minutes, so please, any other questions to come up? Is there anything else from 28 that you want to particularly highlight that we might be surprised about, or anything, Nick?
Sexual harassment.
Yes, right. So Tim's got a question, and he'll appreciate that we're going to talk about sex first, then we're going to come to you, Tim. So Nick.
Okay, so sexual harassment. Now this is something that that is big. So tail end of last year, every business needed to redo their sexual harassment policy as a separate policy, and ensure that training and support, is around that. So videos, risk assessments. We've also had the festive period where that received a huge leap of calls into the advice teams where employees were misbehaving, in a sexual harassment point of view, but there's obviously drinking and all sorts of bits on the back of that. So, and this was down to the Workers' Protection Act in October, and the idea is employers to take more proactive steps in preventing sexual harassment in the workplace. Okay, so that's where it's been major challenges at tribunal level. This, so
what sort of things are that an employer therefore expected to do? Is it about making sure that they've got a policy, or
policies?
What are they supposed to actually do to try and be proactive?
Okay, so employers are forced by the Human Rights Commission, to enforce duties. So investigate breaches and potential breaches. Investigation. So if there is 2 people having a conversation in a kitchen and there's raised voices, and that's the time to act on that. Don't ignore that. Act on that. Bring both parties into your office or in the room and say, look, I've overheard this conversation. Can I just ask what it was about and whether you are okay with it and there's a problem? So that's an example. So employers must provide an action plan. Okay. And to amend and prevent future breaches by serving notices. Okay.
So sounds like sensible steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And ensure that your documentation. So larger employers of 100 staff, recommendation is to do a video and send that round to say that the business doesn't tolerate it. These are areas of sexual harassment. This is what to do about it. This is how to report it. And examples of, messages, text messages, inappropriate emails, comments on Facebook groups, WhatsApp, the whole heap of stuff.
So education, planning, proactive.
Absolutely.
Sensible stuff to do. Quickly, let's get in the last question before we wrap up. So Tix, you haven't done this for a while, Nick, but this 30 minutes flies by, doesn't it? So Tim's question is, it's a bit political question, so we'll just,
I was going to say, I think someone's seen my headline. Someone's seen my...
How much do you consider the government's stated commitment to consultation with business may amend the proposed legislation? So, is this going to be more of an opinion? What do you think, Nick? And I'll put my 2 pence in.
Okay. Can you pop that back up again? Sorry, that
Yeah,
went a bit
sure.
quick again.
So it's how do you think, so with the consultation that's going on at the moment, do you think they're just going to charge through with what they're proposing to do, or are they actually going to listen to businesses during the consultation process?
I understand there has been some listening. So, we had our, end of quarter up in Hinckley on Friday, and we had quite an open session with a few, ministers, and we had a few, some of our lawyers there, and we had quite an open chat about what's going through, what might be proposed. And, again, this is I haven't got a crystal ball, as I'm sure Tim hasn't, and many of us haven't. But you would like to think that there may be a little bit of a rollback on some of what's been pushed through, because there's been a huge amount of change anyway, and a lot of this change, I don't think, has been taken particularly favourably. So the idea of updating and your documentation and your process, and you try and restructure your business in line with these changes. The employment tribunal system, for example, is still having huge amounts through. It's still increasing, still more tribunals now than there has been. So all this change is supposed to improve employee rights, okay, and provide employers with options. But I don't know what Tim's view is, but my view personally is it's almost having the opposite effect. So I'd like to think at some point there will be the option where, there's a bit more dialogue from employers and the reasoning why certain things need to be relooked at. That's what I'd like to see. But, I can tell you now, this has been the most sort of challenging time for all the time that I've been doing this, and it's 18 years now. So,
I think I sort of echo really what you say. I mean, I know I get quite involved in the federation, and I know Federation of Small Businesses. I know the FSB have been doing huge amounts of lobbying, and they definitely do listen to the FSB and the CBI, etc. How much that actually will fall through, I suspect that it will be the pressures between what the unions want versus what the business lobbies want, and it'll probably be, I suspect the majority will go through, but there may be some things that hopefully are red lines that they could get through. Oh, just a second, is there a couple more? Oh yeah, just Tim is agreeing with what we just said, and Franny is too.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So there we are. So hopefully they will listen to the important things, hopefully, but we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Please do get in contact with Nick directly, because his team have got a wealth of experience in employment law and can really help you out in HR. And what's the best places to contact you? Where do you prefer people to contact you, Nick?
Yeah, LinkedIn's always a good one, as people are on there. I'm easally Google. You can Google me too. Nick.Babington.
There's one B in the Babington. There's actually two B's, but only one B in the
middle. There's one, but yeah, that's it. Yeah, Nick.Babington, Babington at Croner.co.uk. Always happy to help. We run a lot of events, and if anybody just wants to chat, and it'd be good to hook up with Tim as well, because I know.
Well, I think you're coming to. You're coming to our 12th of February Lamborghini events, and Tim will be there too.
To that.
So you'll be able
to we're both, from the same sort of background, so we'll have a good chat on that. So that'll be good. Be nice to meet you.
Fantastic. Anyway, thank you, everybody. In 2 weeks' time, we are focusing on financial due diligence. I'm going to be joined by my colleague Bethan Olsey, talking through the process of financial due diligence if you're going to be purchasing a business, or alternatively, also if you're selling your business, what you will expect to be required to provide, etc. But taking you through that so that you'll be well prepared before you get to the point of exiting or purchasing a business. Anyway, thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you for your time, Nick.
Thank you.
And Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. See you later.